video is brought to you by Letsynthesize Academy, the #1 place for practice-oriented courses for serious music producers.
Hey, Dad Larson here, welcome to the newest Synthesis Sunday episode. So I made a phat rack that instantly fattens up your bass sound like insanity. So let's go from this to this, or from this to this, or even from this to this. And the cool part is that it does not rely heavily on OTTs and it contains very smart treats to the sound. So right now let's jump into it. Okay, so this rack is so cool because it can make so powerful sounds from weak sounds like this one. Like, what is this really? This is so aggressive, like the same one here. It sounds cool, but you know, it's just very in the background. And even this, that sounds so cool without the rack. But with the rack. Okay, so let me analyze what I did here in a new Serum instance, because there are some very nice treats here. So it is not based only on OTTs. Let's drop the rack and let me show you what I really dig in this rack. So if I take a simple saw, I'm sure that you can hear this little at the beginning of the sound. Let me try to resample it and you will see what I'm talking about, not only hear it. Like on this one. I so love this little thing. And this comes from the spectral resonator. So let me show it to you. Here is this unison mode cranked up. So if I disable it, there is no at the beginning of the sound. But with some 20% on, and actually this is some unison mode. Now if you want to use it, I suggest you to go in the rack, open the spectral resonator and choose the track that you want to use. So here it will follow the MIDI input, because as you can hear, the pitch of the unison voices will follow your synth notes, and that is very important, and that is especially important if you want to crank this up. Now on lower values like around 20, it's not that important, but I suggest you to do this when you drop this rack on something. So it's so cool because let's say you use the PS2 acid, and let's say you want to FM it from oscillator B, like let's drop a macro on it, and let's add 5 voices of unison with a bandpass filter. Around 24, drop the macro on the cutoff and pull it back a little at around 24 and crack up the octave on oscillator B, and what it does to the sound is so cool. Now the cool part here is you can pull back the OTT, so if you don't like it, or just add a little to it. The other very cool thing here is, as you can see, we have a Foreman shift. So if you pull it back, so the Foreman split knob here is frequency split rack. So let me go here, Foreman shifter, and as you can see, it's another rack where I separated the bands using an EQ8 and I dropped it on the top band, and that is a grain delay actually. So you can decide where and on what frequency band you want to use the grain delay on, and this will definitely change the sound, as you can hear. Now in this particular example, it does not sound very well, but if we go to a different one, for example this one, yeah, this is definitely different. Or this one. And this is very cool because with this, I mean with the frequency split rack, you don't mess up the low end. So it's really up to you how you use it, but it's so cool to have it here. Now let's dive in the rack And let me show you what I did here. So the main concept behind this rack is to add as many colors as possible, but just a slight touch to it. So we don't want to go crazy with the extra harmonics, like using saturation, distortion and stuff like that, but just adding a slight touch to it, and especially on the low end. So again, you can see a frequency split and a drive knob. This is the first rack, and again, it uses two bands, top band and bottom band, and I added the pedal tool here on the low end. And with the macro knob, with the drive or the saturation, saturation 1 drive, you can add phat value to the pedal. I decided to pull it back in this example, but obviously with different sounds it can come handy to crank this up a little. Now the next one is again the same thing, but this time I use the amp with the blues simulation. So again, it's the same thing. You can decide the frequency split, and it adds extra harmonics to everything below around 400 Hz. So you can change that too. But I think at around 400 or 800 it's cool. And the fourth one is the same thing again on the bottom part, but this time it's a bit warmer preset, and this always adds very nice harmonies to your sound. But again, be careful with that, so I set it to 8 decibels. Okay, so these were the saturation. We already talked about the spectral resonator, and I also added a glue compressor with really high attack value, and this is simply because I love transients on basses. So I'm sure that you can hear this kind of sound. Let me resample it for you. So you can see this. So it's so cool, I love it. So this is why the glue compressor is here, to add some nice transient to it and nice attack. Okay, the next one is some very slight overdrive, so you can see it here in the macros. The next one is a tape saturation. So after you crank up the tape saturation, the whole sound gets very gritty, so like it definitely adds very nice grit to the sound. The Foreman shifter rack is that we already explored, and I added 2 instances of OTTs, and I cranked up the time to 100, or sorry, it is on 1000. Now that is simply I didn't want to have the effects tails coming out from the OTT. If you don't like this sound, just pull it back or set it to your own taste, but unfortunately I ran out of macros. That is funny because we already have 16 in Ableton 11. But you know, the OTT is important. And the crazy sub is so cool. And this is not an EQ, and this is a corpus. And there is a preset in the corpus folder called Sub Filter Boost. So I decided to use this preset to add a huge boost to the sub. And obviously you don't want to go crazy with that, because this is what you get after that. But with some slight values, you can have very nice low end on your sound. It goes hand in hand with the OTT. So if you use the OTT, the corpus will sound a little better on the low end. Okay, and I also decided to add the Haas effect. I'm not a big fan of that, but I know that most of the guys love to use that. So for that, if you want to activate it, crank up the Haas wet, and you can set the delay time and again the split, because I wanted to keep the bottom as clean as possible. So keep it at around 10 milliseconds, and you can set the split. So if you want to just affect the very top end, you can do that. Or ruin your whole sound. Ouch, this is definitely not very great. So set it at around, I don't know, like 1000 Hz, because what I love to do is keep the middles and the highs stereo, but the lows and the middle lows mono. And the Haas rack is very cool. So I added a limiter after that and an extra few decibels of drive using the saturator with the soft clip on. Okay, so this is how the rack works, and if you want to download these sounds with the racks, you can go to my Patreon. And if you want to dig deeper into production, check my academy for very cool start to finish masterclasses. I was Larson. See you guys next time. Peace.